We are tracking this with our justice and intelligence reporter, Ken Dilanian, and a pair of MS Now legal analysts, former Assistant Manhattan DA Catherine Christian and former federal prosecutor Paul Butler. Welcome to all. So, Ken, we have reported that this acting period was more or less a job interview for Blanche. What was the deciding factor for him to get the gig? And was anyone else ever seriously considered in the end?
Yes, there were others who were seriously considered. Harmeet Dillon, for example, the head of the Civil Rights Division, and others. But Todd Blanche did everything that Donald Trump could have hoped he would do in this interim period. And we should point out, Alex, that he hasn't been promoted yet. And there's very serious questions about whether Todd Blanche could be confirmed by even this Republican Senate to this job, given the fact that there are some senators now, some Republicans who are off the reservation, including John Cornyn, who has just lost his primary after Donald Trump endorsed his opponent, particularly in the wake of this imbroglio over the $1.8 billion slush fund that they walked back. But leaving that aside, this is an elevation for Todd Blanche. He's now the nominee, and under the rules, he can remain as the acting attorney general as long as that nomination is pending before the Senate, because he's previously been Senate confirmed and he was the first assistant. And look, we've all seen it. Todd Blanche has been much more effective than Pam Bondi in carrying out the kind of agenda that Donald Trump was looking for, including pushing forward these criminal cases against Donald Trump's political enemies, whether it's James Comey or the Southern Poverty Law Center indictment or the FACE Act enforcement situation about abortion clinics. He's been very aggressive on the kinds of cases that Donald Trump and his MAGA supporters want to see out there. And at the same time, he's a much more facile presenter to the media and in congressional hearings. Pam Bondi was she was essentially constrained. The only interview she did was with Fox News. She rarely went before the Justice Department press corps. Todd Blanche was a federal prosecutor for 9 years. He can handle himself. He can answer questions. We may not like his answers. Members of Congress may not like his answers, but he's an articulate defender of Donald Trump's worldview, Alex.
Yeah, absolutely. And that may well be all of that. But Catherine, can you take a step back? Give us this perspective. How extraordinary is it that you have a former criminal defense attorney for the President of the United States taking over the Justice Department of the United States?
It's very extraordinary. And as Ken said, he pointed out that Todd Blanche's duty of loyalty is to Donald Trump personally, because he was his personal attorney, I'm sure got paid very well, and that's where his duty of loyalty is. It's not to the Justice Department, it is not to the United States. So his actions, and hopefully the Senate will ask him more about things other than Jeffrey Epstein. They'll ask him about the minimally qualified appointments of U.S. attorneys and all of the hit people, the people on the hit list, the perceived enemies that he has willfully gone after because of his personal loyalty to Donald Trump.
Are you, Paul, surprised by this choice and Blanche's trajectory overall? I mean, what could have predicted that he would land in this position?
I'm not surprised, because since he was appointed as acting, he's clearly been auditioning for the role. He brought this ludicrous case against James Comey about some letters that on a beach, and he presides over the prosecution of the Southern Poverty Law Center, a civil rights organization that's being prosecuted for trying to get rid of the Klan. But Alex, I think there will be two problems with this nomination. One is the slush money fund, and the other is Jeffrey Epstein. So he was the biggest administration cheerleader for the weaponization fund. He wouldn't even rule out payments to convicted January 6 criminals who assaulted police officers. And with regard to Epstein, last week, former Attorney General Bondi said that Blanche was the administration's point person on that. So Blanche will have to answer for the bundle rollout, in which over 100 survivors' personal information was released. He'll have to explain whether the Transparency Act was fully complied with. And finally, Alex, he'll have to explain why, after he interviewed convicted sex offender Ghislaine Maxwell, she got cushy treatment from the Bureau of Prisons.
Yeah, all those are going to be forthcoming. And to your point, yes, a huge layer of this story is indeed the Trump DOJ settlement fund, your word, slush fund. I want to highlight the contrasting comments on that. It's from Blanche this week and then President Trump yesterday. Take a listen.
We are not moving forward with the fund.
Not moving forward ever.
Correct.
Is the $1.8 billion DOJ fund dead or is it on hold?
It's, I'd have to ask the lawyers. I don't know. I know one thing, the weaponization. Are you talking about the weaponization fund?
Yeah, what's your decision?
The weaponization fund, as far as I'm concerned, was a beautiful thing. It was something I didn't make it, but I heard that. I thought that was the greatest thing.
Ken, what do we know about the actual status of this arrangement and what Blanche's role was in it?
Well, Blanche played a key role both in the crafting of the settlement and also the addendum, which is still in place, which holds Donald Trump and his family harmless from an IRS audit that could have cost him $100 million. So let's not forget that part of it. But this is really interesting because Todd Blanche, Donald Trump sent him out to the public and to the Hill to defend this $1.8 billion settlement fund, even as Republicans were expressing serious doubts about it. And then he had to go back out and essentially retreat and say, we're not doing it. And Donald Trump, you heard his comments there. He's speaking to his base. They love this idea and he loves this idea. And they're playing a little game here. The question is is it really dead or is it just dead for the midterms period? And then afterwards they bring it back. There's nothing that would preclude that. Now, they're suggesting that this was essentially a settlement of a legal case, but a lot of experts, and you can talk to our guests here, are very dubious about that, and they're even dubious about the Justice Department's ability to essentially enforce this settlement and this fund. There's kind of a loophole in the law. There's this thing called the Judgment Fund that allows the Justice Department to settle legitimate lawsuits without congressional approval. But you may see a congressional act that constrains them from doing this because there's so much opposition, even in the Republican Party, as regular Americans are struggling with high gas prices. The idea that January 6th felons who attacked police officers could get multi-million-dollar settlements is not going over well in any quarter, Alex.
Yeah, Catherine, does it require something more than just, yeah, I'm just telling you, it's all done? Does it need an act of Congress? Does it need a court order? Does it need something at least in writing?
It needs something in writing because of what you just showed with the president not taking a stand on whether or not it actually is dead. And they put the weaponization fund in writing. They put that tax immunity in writing. Why can't they also put in writing that we're withdrawing all of this?
And part two, Blanche testifying about the IRS, I guess, clean slate, if you will, for Trump, his family, any of his business entities. Why is that a separate thing? And does this now open itself up to legal challenges?
Well, some people have argued it's separate because that was really the goal. It was really the goal more for Trump's family, himself, and his businesses to get out of tax problems, which can anyone else who also is being audited, do their audit stop? No. So why is it just Trump, his family, and his businesses who don't have to basically pay taxes up until May 19th, which is the effective date of that addendum?
Yeah. So, Paul, Blanche has made some pretty bold claims to Congress when it comes to this settlement agreement or the Epstein Files release, something that Ken was discussing there, or meeting with Epstein survivors, or again, the Ghislaine Maxwell prison transfer. Is it possible that he's already lied to Congress before any confirmation proceedings, and that could come back to bite him when he's questioned by the Senate?
So he is a very effective lawyer, Blanche is. He just seems to be confused about who his client is now. It's the United States of America, not Donald Trump. So I would be surprised if there's something that's actually a provable lie, perjury or false statements. As a lawyer, his statements to Congress will probably be carefully cabined.
All right. I want to thank all of you for starting us off on this Thursday. Ken Dilanian, Catherine Christian, and Paul Butler. Appreciate you.